For the first time since the Iran war sent gas prices into the stratosphere, German factories are growing again. The streak of monthly contraction just broke. Manufacturing capacity utilization had fallen from 84% to 77%. Now, it's ticking up. The question keeping Frankfurt awake, is this real or just a bounce before the next escalation? I'm David. In late May 2026, a single data point landed in Frankfurt and changed the conversation about Europe's largest economy overnight. German industrial output grew, for the first time since the energy shock that began when Russia invaded Ukraine and deepened when Iran-Israel tensions sent global gas prices to levels no factory budget could absorb. That one monthly figure broke a contraction streak that had gripped German manufacturing for years. For months, the only question was how much deeper the damage would cut. Now, for the first time, the arrow pointed up. But a single month of growth does not undo years of erosion. Underneath that headline sits a manufacturing base that has been hollowed out sector by sector at a pace few outside Germany truly grasped. The chemicals industry, the bedrock of everything from pharmaceuticals to plastics, has been shrinking without interruption since 2019. The auto sector, Germany's crown jewel, is still building 30% fewer cars than it did a decade ago. 1 in 4 German jobs ties back to industry. When the factory floor shrinks, the whole country feels it. So the number everyone is watching is not whether 1 month turned green. The number that matters is whether this is the start of something real, or the last flicker before the lights go out for good. That flicker, if that is all it turns out to be, would land as the cruelest kind of false hope for a sector that has been bleeding out in slow motion. Rewind to early 2022. German factories were humming at 84.5% of capacity. By the first quarter of this year, that number had collapsed to 77.2%. 7 percentage points may not register as much until you understand what idle capacity means in manufacturing. Machinery sitting silent. Shifts not scheduled. Orders that were never placed because the energy bill alone would eat the margin. The chemicals sector absorbed the hardest blow. Production has fallen every single year since 2019. BASF, the world's largest chemical company, a pillar of German industry for 28 years, announced it was permanently shrinking its European operations. Not a temporary cutback while waiting for prices to ease. A structural retreat. Its sales dropped another 3.8% in 2025 alone. When BASF decides that making things in Europe no longer adds up, it is not signaling a rough quarter. It is signaling that the energy math has broken. Natural gas is the feedstock for chemicals, and when European gas costs 3 to 5 times what it does in the US or the Middle East, no amount of German engineering closes that gap. The question by the middle of this decade was no longer how fast Germany would bounce back. It was whether the country still had a plan. It had a plan, and the speed of it stunned everyone who had written Germany off as too slow, too bureaucratic, too wedded to the way things had always been done. Between November 2022 and September 2023, less than 11 months, Germany built 4 floating LNG terminals from scratch. Wilhelmshaven, Brunsbüttel, Lubmin, Mukran. These are not small projects. A floating storage and regasification unit is a ship the size of an aircraft carrier, packed with equipment that takes super-chilled liquid gas and turns it back into something a pipeline can carry. Before the war, Germany had 0 of these. The government waived normal permitting, a process that in Germany can stretch longer than a human pregnancy, and declared LNG infrastructure a project of national significance. The first terminal went live at Wilhelmshaven in November 2022, 8 months after the invasion of Ukraine. 3 more followed within the year. 2 additional units are scheduled to come online, pushing total import capacity past 30 billion cubic meters per year. The result? was a total reorientation of where Germany's gas comes from. Russian pipeline supply, dominant for decades, dropped to nothing. Norway now provides 48% of pipeline imports. The Netherlands, 25%. Belgium, 18%. American LNG makes up roughly a tenth of total supply. A small share on paper, but a critical insurance policy against the next disruption. The terminals gave Germany a lifeline. What they could not do was make the gas cheap. Cheap or not, some industries found a way through the storm, while others are still sinking beneath it. Step onto the floor of a German auto plant in 2026, and the line is moving again. Passenger car output collapsed to 3.1 million units in 2021, the worst year in decades. By 2024, it had recovered to just over 4 million, and it held steady there through 2025, even ticking up 2% to 415 million. That is still 30% below the 2016 peak of 5.8 million, a permanent downsizing, not a comeback. But for the workers on the line in Wolfsburg and Sindelfingen, stability after years of freefall counts as relief. Electrical products and transport equipment also bounced back, powered by record order backlogs that piled up during the worst of the energy shock. Companies were not winning new business. They were finally building what they had already sold. Now look at the other half of the screen. Chemicals and metals. The energy-hungry industries that supply everything else Germany makes are still contracting. The research we reviewed says recovery in these sectors is, quote, increasingly unlikely. Chinese import competition is intensifying. The cost gap is not closing. Volkswagen has already announced restructuring plans that point to flat growth ahead. One, Germany is stabilizing, the other is still falling. Both versions of the future cannot be right. That split-screen reality is now landing on one desk in Frankfurt, and the decision hanging over it will shape whether the recovery sticks or stalls. The European Central Bank has spent the past year walking a tightrope. On one side, inflation that refuses to settle comfortably at 2%. On the other, an industrial heartland that needs cheaper money to invest its way out of trouble. That first month of output growth changes the equation. When factories are shrinking, the case for cutting rates is straightforward. You cut to stop the bleeding. When they start growing, even weakly, the doves inside the ECB have to argue harder. Recovery, however fragile, reduces the urgency for immediate easing. But the central bank's own analysis shows energy-intensive manufacturing is still running far below trend. Capacity utilization remains depressed. Investment plans are frozen. If the ECB waits too long to cut because the headline number looks better than the reality underneath, it chokes off the recovery before it takes hold. If it cuts too soon and inflation rebounds, it loses the credibility it spent 2 years rebuilding. The rate decision is not just about data. It is about which Germany the ECB believes is the real one, and which one it is willing to bet on. Watch Germany light up. That 25% industrial share of GDP, the highest of any major Western European economy. Now, glance at France, at just 18%. The deeper your industrial base, the harder the energy shock hit, but also the more you gain when costs ease. Italy sits at 24%, wedged between the two. France's manufacturing contracted in 2025. Italy's auto rebound reversed. Germany alone is still pushing forward. Whether that lead holds comes down to a single variable nobody in Berlin controls. That variable is the price of energy, and it is not in Germany's hands. Every part of this story, the tentative month of growth, the 4 floating terminals, the 2-speed recovery, rests on a single assumption: that energy prices stay where they are or keep drifting down. The research we reviewed is blunt about what happens if they do not. Any renewed Iran, Israel escalation that threatens tanker routes through the Strait of Hormuz would spike crude and LNG prices and reverse Germany's industrial recovery within a month. The infrastructure that keeps German factories running, the terminals at Wilhelmshaven and Brunsbüttel, the pipeline connections to Norway, was built to manage a supply shock that already happened. It was not built to absorb a second one layered on top of the first. And here is the uncomfortable truth the data exposes. Germany did not solve its energy problem. It replaced one dependency with another. Russian pipeline gas was swapped for Norwegian pipeline gas and American LNG. The supply is diversified, which is genuinely better. But the price is still set by global markets that Berlin cannot control. The first month of growth is real. The numbers are real. But the foundation they sit on is thinner than anyone in Frankfurt wants to admit. Germany's industrial recovery is not a comeback story. Not yet. It is a bet. A bet that the Middle East stays quiet, that tankers keep moving, that the one variable nobody controls does not turn hostile. History does not suggest that is a safe wager. Germany proved industrial Europe can survive the energy shock. If that matters to you, hit like and subscribe. I'm David. See you tomorrow.